John Scardino is spokesperson for Democrats Abroad UK. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, and Erol Morkoc is Vice Chairman of External Relations for Republicans Overseas UK. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Let's just establish something. Erol, fair and square, genuinely, who won the election?
Well, it looks like Joe Biden is going to be inaugurated tomorrow, and nobody can argue with that.
Right, just to clarify that, if the vote counting had been completely fair, as every court has said it has been, who won the election?
Well, I just answered your question. Joe Biden is being inaugurated as president tomorrow.
So you think it's a genuine result? He genuinely did win. He genuinely got more votes.
Well, that's the way that the system works. And as President Trump had said, if the Electoral College certified those votes and everything was deemed to be in order, then he would concede, as he did, and Joe Biden will become president. I'm not sure what about that.
There was no fraud, no skullduggery. You accept that result? Okay. John Scardino, what is this day like for you?
It's a really thrilling day. It's been a huge victory for Democrats, not only electing President Biden, I should say President-elect Biden and Senator Harris, but in Georgia we had an enormous victory, my home state, turning that state from red to blue. It's been a very conservative state for decades, and having elected an African-American and a Jewish-American to the Senate from Georgia, I think is an enormous accomplishment.
I'm just wondering, did he not, any achievements that he may have had over his term, Donald Trump, in his bleating and his tantrums, claiming he genuinely won the election, was that not embarrassing?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Sorry. It is. You would think that a president would go out with a little bit more style. Donald Trump is not one to have much style. He's taken a hammer to everything. You might remember that when he came in 2016, a reporter asked Steve Bannon, his chief advisor, is it your intention to reform the government? And Bannon's reply was, I don't want to reform it. I want to burn it down. And that pretty much proved to be the case. There wasn't an interest. There wasn't a respect for democratic institutions. There wasn't a respect for the rule of law. This president has used the Justice Department, which has traditionally been an independent agency to investigate fraud and misdoing, not only in the general public, but in the administration, whether it's Democratic or Republican. And President Trump used that as his own sort of personal law firm to defend himself against a variety of things. So it's not surprising that we are where we are. It's disappointing that the president didn't exercise more leadership and act more presidential. And I think if he had, we would have had a more serious response to the COVID crisis from the beginning, over a year ago, or about a year ago, when the COVID crisis started in America. If he had taken it more seriously and acted more presidential, I think that we wouldn't be in quite so bad a position as we are.
Erol Morkoc, how embarrassed were you by the last few weeks, and also what happened in Washington?
Well, certainly it was a turbulent time for both Americans and the Republican Party. In hindsight, some of the decisions made by President Trump perhaps backfired in very obvious ways. Nobody is proud of what happened regarding the clowns who decided to storm the Capitol. Whether or not those people represent the people in the party that I know, that's not how we see it. But certainly there was a unfortunate sense to how it all came. But you have to keep in mind, this is a person who did not have the support of the Republican establishment upon conception and on the way out. He, was the same kind of outsider candidate, outsider individual. He didn't care much for a convention. He's not, worried about the way he leaves his legacy in the same way that somebody who's a career politician would. So looking at it, in a positive way, we saw the Republican Party show that it's a very healthy, robust debate in the party. You have new faces coming in. You have people expressing, different viewpoints. The party has gotten more diverse, which is great.
He incited a riot.
Well, that's not how we see it. We don't think he incited a riot. We think that a riot certainly took place, and President Trump.
He said he loved them.
Well, he said that he wanted everybody to leave, and he made a 2-minute video, which perhaps had some adjectives that were poorly chosen. But nobody is, thinking that Donald Trump is inciting a riot when he's the person who calls for a peaceful march down there to have your voice peacefully heard. That's a tough way. If you went after every political candidate who gave a firebrand speech to a group of partisans, you'd be very hard pressed to find anybody left in politics if you tried
What's
to
your reaction
assuage
to
their
that,
actions.
John Scardino?
Well, look, I think we could spend an awful lot of your showtime talking about the sins of Donald Trump and the sins of politicians in general. But the Democratic Party and President-elect Biden and Senator Harris are eager to move ahead. There's some huge issues facing America. We're still in the middle of a very dramatic pandemic that is affecting America, not only with hundreds of thousands dead and hundreds of thousands more infected, but the economy is in tatters.
But what about COVID? When he doubled down on his opposition to basic necessary public health measures, and those tweets, liberate Virginia, liberate Michigan, liberate Minnesota, that was extraordinary, not only promoting disunity, but promoting danger. Erol.
Well, as I said, I think that was a real tragedy that he decided to do that. And this is a guy who never really.
Erol, just respond to that. I know we know what you think. Sorry, Erol, respond to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to look at the president's response in regard to the actuality, where the Defense Production Act was mobilized. You had PPE being put on lock by everybody from FEMA to General Motors. You had Operation Warp Speed for the vaccine. You had a president who got out front of these disastrous lockdowns. My home state of California, for example, on full lockdown, and has some of the highest death rates in the country, whereas where some of my family lives in Florida, they don't have these same lockdowns.
Requests from the governors of states who'd been hard hit by coronavirus turned into opportunities for partisan and sectarian attack as well. You had those massive in-person rallies. On COVID, at the very least, it's a mixed record. But what about Biden, John Scardino? As Erol Morkoc points out, yet another insider, political insider.
Well, I would choose to say here's a guy who has a lot of experience. He was obviously the most recent Democratic vice president. Excuse me. He has the knowledge and experience on how to get the government working. And as I was saying earlier, I think one of Trump's great failures was that he never stopped campaigning. He never became, a leader of government, and he always continued to campaign throughout his 4 years, trying to split Republicans and Democrats across the country. There was even, there was one point where he said, if you look at the death rate in blue states that voted for Hillary Clinton, he said that and you take those away, the death rate in red states isn't so bad. I mean, I think that's an awful way to look at a illness.
Joe Biden, questionable attitudes in the past on race, and some of his attitudes, some of his actions on penal reform have led to a disproportionate amount of black people being put in prison. Some of the things he said in the past, extremely questionable. This man is no saint on those issues. But Erol Morkoc, can I just when President Trump mocked that disabled reporter towards the beginning of his presidency, I think it was, I found that so shocking. The so-called leader of the Western world, a man occupying the White House, the most powerful office globally, would do something like that and mock a disabled person. When I saw him doing that, I felt physically sick.
Yeah, that's a valid reaction, and the only thing to say on that is that Donald Trump and everybody involved with him has said that he did not know that individual was disabled, and the
He
action
did. He'd known him for years. He'd known him for years.
He has made.
They were on first name terms.
Well, hang on a second. It doesn't make it any better, but Donald Trump has done that action and that sort of mannerism multiple times. That doesn't make him look like a better candidate, but you can go back through how he's given speeches. And it's a kind of a grotesque way of doing things, perhaps, especially in the public sphere. But I don't think that Donald Trump was directly mocking a disabled person. That's at least how he's put it out there. I'm not going to stand here and defend somebody's when it's he said, she said. Certainly, he was on camera making a gesture that after the fact was very inappropriate. But that wasn't, the way we've looked at presidency. Interesting data point to fixate on.
A different tone of presidency to come, no doubt. Thank you both, John Scardino, spokesperson for Democrats abroad, and Erol Morkoc, Vice Chairman of External Relations for Republicans Overseas UK. It's 8:20.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.